Okay. So, hi Tim. Thank you for participating in my research thing. Um, I'm really happy that I got to work with story. So I named my master's thesis "Mediation of Memories on Story" because I thought that was relevant to you guys and interesting for me as an academic topic. So I want you to participate in this interview because I think it's really interesting if you do that and not just me telling what I think. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So firstly, I want to give you some quotes from my informants. I chose the positive quotes because I thought that might be fun. So um, one of my informants, the one you know, said it was a revolutionary, innovative concept that is beyond compare with any other media. So that's kind of, yeah, she really believes in this. And one of the things that added value to my informants was that it gave a room for storytelling without interruption. So um, there was a space between asking questions and answering them that they really enjoyed, and that gave rise to questions that might not have would have arisen otherwise, according to them. That made them think of the height and depth of important events in their life in an expanded time frame. I don't know if that's what you wanted to do with story, to have this sort of experience for people.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. I read over your thesis,
Mm,
especially the part where you looked at the five themes,
yeah.
and I found it really interesting where, yeah, the extended time frame
Mm,
or the time shift that was, yeah, because we designed story quite intuitively for us. Like thinking what would be the best way to make it work so that it would result in the most possible memories being shared. But of course, it doesn't mean we analyzed every aspect of it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Or analyzed every aspect of the experience. And so this idea of a time shift that enables um, the storyteller to think before answering was really, yeah, an interesting concept that they get the question and then they think about it, maybe, I don't know, for an hour, maybe for a day, and then they tell their story, and that's helpful for them in sort of reminding them of memories. Yeah, that was a really good thing.
Mm, yeah. I think so. I'm happy you read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually my okay. My research setup. I'll just explain that. I did an informant sampling that was selective. I asked a lot of people, and mostly women wanted to do it, and only people that I knew and had rapport with, or that one of my informants knew and had rapport with, would do it. Um, so I could have done a larger study, but it was the process of sampling these people was too slow for me to do it with my master's thesis. For instance, if I thought about using elderly people, and I actually could have ended up doing that, but it was just too slow because I thought that might be relevant for you guys, because that is your one of your target groups, right? Care centers and that sort of thing. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So they used it for a month, and the funny thing is nobody's done the exact same research before with four generations of one parent, one child, and people haven't researched mediated memories with this sort of research. They've only the only similar study I found was on gender. So I interviewed them with video chat, did my analysis, and arrived at five themes that you spoke of. So one of the most important things was relationship. I'd say that's the most important theme because they really wanted to, yeah, build this collective, small collective relationship, and that's also because I asked them to do that. And then they reflected on lots of things. For instance, the elderly, their own memories, their media, UX, everything. They really talked not just about their experience, but they reflected on their experience. They had memories. Yeah, that was central because that's what they shared. And the media, they sort of understood their they understood story in terms of a context of different media, Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger. Um, so that was cool to talk to them about how do you view these media that you already use compared to story. And of course
Yeah.
they talked about the UX or technical limitations and possibilities. But you like these themes, you say?
Yeah, I really liked the themes. So a lot of, I mean, all of it made sense. All of it was helpful. I really liked how, obviously as a founder, I really like the positive comments, that are affirming, and I've got to make sure that I don't read your work with that bias, the affirmation bias or confirmation bias, where
Yeah.
you're looking for things that are confirming your theory. But there was there's some interesting comments there, especially that people, like the listeners, felt like they could ask questions that they normally wouldn't feel comfortable asking because the medium allows them to do that, because the app allows them to do that. So I really liked that idea, even if it meant that some of the storytellers weren't willing to answer those questions. To me, it still was helpful that that the listener was able to ask the questions. And then of course some storytellers aren't going to be willing to share details of their lives, and that's a reality. Like that was the case before we got them using story, and it hasn't changed. But it's a disappointment, I guess, for their listeners. Yeah, so that was an interesting thing to wrestle with. Obviously the UX problems, the technical problems with the app, that's disappointing. And it makes me realize how important it is for the app to be really well functioning, and also not to promise anything that we can't deliver on. Like I noticed in my own using of the app that the notification system doesn't work yet. And so ideally then we should remove that from settings so that no one thinks that there's going to be notifications. And then it's just an MVP, and it doesn't promise notifications. But yeah, the other comments about like a longer recording being deleted, obviously we need to sort those problems out, because we need, like I think your research showed, we need a high degree of trust in the app. And the more there are technical difficulties and problems with the app, the less trust there is. So that's an issue.
Yeah, and also I had an informant answering a pre-made prompt, so a question that the app uh, that the app gave her, and that was
Yeah.
valuable for both the listener and the storyteller.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really liked how it emphasized one-way communication, your research. For me, part of that is just that we haven't built features like commenting on stories or liking stories. And we expected to do that. But reading your research made me think it's actually quite nice to have most of the power in the hands of the storyteller, especially if they're an aged person, because of elder abuse and because of the lack of respect that elders are shown in society, especially in the West. It's really nice to just give them all the power in the app. And so maybe we don't want to have likes and comments, because likes and comments give some power to the listener. The listener can choose which stories to like and which stories not to like. And in some way that then gives them some power. Maybe we don't want them to have power. Maybe we want them just to have the agency of asking questions, and that's it. You know what I mean?
I'll
I don't
come
know.
with one
Something to
suggestion on that if
Yeah.
at a later slide, if that's okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I did these relationship memos that I found really useful in my research, and one of them was an informant pair where the technical did not work for them, but they compared it to writing memoirs, WhatsApp that they thought was superior, and also really important, really interesting Google Docs because the notification system that did not work, and they thought that might be on purpose. Um,
Yeah.
so
It's
that
not, but yeah.
yeah, so that it would be so important that you'd go in and work with it like Google Docs without getting notifications. Um, and then they compared it to a tape recorder, a really old technology, is just just also with prompts. And so yeah, one of these informants really had some thoughts about respecting your elders and that you're not entitled to stories from the elders, and it's a privilege that they would share that with you about their lives.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Um, then I had some different levels of analysis that I thought was interesting, and I really asked them, and they really tended to focus on the collective, but the UX limitations made them think of the cultural. Um, because it didn't work, they compared it to other media, for instance, or they
Yes.
said it would be good for the elderly if, and then they talk more about that. So that was. But on the other hand, the affordances you made also made made this possible. Um,
Yeah.
um, so I got a video from one of my informants, and I just want to make sure if you can hear the audio. But it's on a bit of technical feedback just to get one of their voices out there. I'll just play it.
Hi,
Okay.
my name is Sarah, and I was a part of Christian Work Story Project.
Can you hear
I
it?
just had a few pain points that I'd like to share that might be good to consider. So, first things first, in the welcome email, there were no visuals, no brand awareness or anything that would make me realize that it was from Story beside the text. So I'd really love if there was a logo or anything like that just made me know that this was Story visually. Next, also in the part of registering for the app, it was very, very hard to upload, or the process of uploading a photo was unnecessarily hard. It didn't have any indication that I was actually in the process of uploading my photo after I had pressed OK, and it was very hard to crop the image to the right measurements that was required. So that might need a look over, but I hope that that was already a part of the debugging process. Next, of course, the most annoying was that, or the most heartbreaking almost, was that when you were recording messages, answers for the questions, it was my mom doing it, and she would get cut off. There was no message telling her, oh, you're 5 minutes, or any amount limit was almost up. There was no indication of that. It just would cut her off and delete the recording entirely. And if you've been pouring your heart out, that's kind of a big one. So yeah, of course, also hard to navigate and stuff like that, but I hope that was already something you'd take a look at. So yeah, good luck, and yeah, thanks.
Could you hear that?
Yeah, I could hear that. Yeah, it's really sad that it cut off the longer recordings. I agree 100%. I've done that before as well. Recording something, and then you get a phone call and then it cuts it off completely. And it's not just with our app. I've had it happen with other things like WhatsApp as well. WhatsApp has solved that problem in the last little while. I remember it used to just delete the recording if you got a phone call in the middle of it. Oh, but it's so frustrating, and especially for someone who has been pouring out their heart. And yeah, so we definitely need to make sure that's not a bug when we go to market.
Also, on the elderly thing, I think it would be useful if the listeners could select categories, because sometimes my parent informants did not. It was not intuitive for them that they had to put their stories into categories after they made the stories. So
Sure.
so in that sense, I would prefer if the children had a bit more power, because
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Okay. So um, I thought about some possible technical approaches that I thought might be fun. Of course, I could focus on the code, and I actually understood the web apps code because I've worked with it before, similar stuff. And you can do surveillance, which I did not want to do because that would be getting too involved in their privacy. And also there are numerous AI. I don't know if that imitate where you describe how you remember someone and then they communicate to you as if they were that person. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's there.
Yeah, I
So
thought about that. I even thought about that before before these things came into existence. I had the idea maybe a year ago or more about how when if you record all of these stories, and then we could eventually upload that into the metaverse, and then with the videos and photos of the person, and then it creates an avatar of them, and then you could interact with them using AI. It's certainly interesting. Obviously, that firstly there are privacy issues, so we'd want people to be able to give consent to that kind of thing. And secondly, it's not our main focus, so it's more like a secondary question for us. Like once one story is off the ground working, maybe we've got a good customer base and we're already ready to explore the next step. Then that would be the time to explore integration with other existing technologies, like for example ancestry.com. Those the websites that allow you to study your family history.
yeah.
Maybe we could explore sort of APIs with them somehow. Like you can include your stories into ancestry.com so that other people are able then to, when they find you in their family tree, they're able to access your stories as well if you want them to be able to access that. That's one area of integration, and another is, of course, traditional social media. Would we be able to share stories on Facebook? What would that look like? Of course, this kind of using AI to replicate someone's personality so that you could interact with them. Yeah, I think all of those things are possibilities, but they're definitely not the main goal at the moment.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons they trust you guys is because you're not traditional social media, because there's an ad-based business model, and you're you pay one time and then you have it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's something that we need to make sure that we don't in any way do anything that would limit trust, including using AI. Like one thing we could do is use AI to listen to their stories and then think up the next prompt to ask them that would be most likely able to generate another story. So we could have AI doing that, right? And we might eventually have that, have an API there. But we've got to be very careful about allowing technology to listen to the stories. And it would have to be optional. We want people to have maximum control over their own story.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's going towards the end of this presentation, but I think that story is a great tool for the mediation of memories, or at least it could be if the technical issues are fixed. People tend to believe in the idea, but some of them also say that they don't believe in the software right now. But it helps build a relationship. It facilitates the sharing of unshared memories, new things that also things that do not come up when you meet physically and talk physically. and they think about media and the elderly when using story, and yeah, people naturally think about how this could work with the elderly because they think that stories from the elderly are actually valuable.
Yeah.
And also they reflect on UX, and that's, as I say, people think of society at large because things do not work, and that's actually been an interesting opportunity for me to that it did that. Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask about UX? I noticed that most of what they're saying, or probably all of what they're saying, is technical issues with the app. I didn't hear anyone criticizing the UX design of the app, like that it's not intuitive to use, but they may have done that. So if you can think of criticisms of the actual design of the app, I'd love to know any of those criticisms.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. You need to know that in addition to, they told me lots of things in addition to what I have in the paper. They told me lots of things
Yeah.
while using it, and I couldn't include that. I had to say that
Yeah.
yeah. So of course there was an issue that it didn't land on the right page when you went on the app, and
Yeah.
Sarah just told me you couldn't crop the photo
Yeah.
of her. I think
Yeah, so all
people,
of that stuff feels like that they're bugs that need to be fixed. But
yeah,
they're
also
not issues with the design, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
I don't know if it's the design, but I think the part where you categorize it didn't work for
Yeah,
people.
okay.
It didn't work
Yeah,
for
that's
them.
yeah. I don't like that either. It feels like it's a bit clunky. You know, like it's asking you, was that story a professional story or a personal story? And it feels like, well, every story is a personal story.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So,
And that's
but
also what
some
one
of
of
them are about work, I guess. But yeah, it does. The categorization thing is something I think we need to think about a little bit more.
yeah, one of my informants said the tags were irrelevant. So,
Yeah, I agree.
and
I agree.
also
I think your informant's right.
they didn't understand. Two of my parent informants at least didn't understand um, the year thing, so they just always uh, added the year where they were born or their birth year.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, the year thing I think is really helpful, but that's interesting that they didn't understand that.
Mm.
We'll have to have a look at the wording there, because that's obviously, you know, this story occurred in which year, so that then when we do enable functionality where you can change the order of the stories, you could change them to chronological order.
Also,
Currently, they're just in the order of telling the story.
Also, one of my informants could translate everything into Danish with something on her iPhone, but another person who also had an iPhone, yeah, 'cause the person you know's mom really had issues with because she didn't know English. So
Yeah.
she had to be held in her hand, and she couldn't do it without somebody helping her.
Okay.
But that was also because there were too many stumbling blocks on the way, like the categorization thing that was too difficult for her to understand. And that's also one of the things that, like the suggestion I came up with that she came up with, that if it's for the elderly, you needed to make it good, easy technically, and there are too many details that the children could fill out.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good point. Yeah, enabling listeners to help with categorization, and I guess in that way you could probably appoint a primary listener who then has that authority, so that if you had too many of them, if they all had that authority, then it could lead to conflict in some way. Like, you know, someone categorizes a story in this way, someone does it in that way. I don't know. Maybe that's not an issue that we'd need to worry about. Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, my informants have also discussed whether it's possible for. One of my informants said that its story would be of greatest value when children turn 20 and the parents are not at elderly care centers yet, because she does not believe people are cognitively capable of sharing stories at that point. But on the other hand, one of my informants believes that um, people that the elderly might get more visitors if they tell interesting stories, or if the care personnel helps them do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think we also need to realize that, like, with every passing year, the situation for elderly people and technology is changing.
yeah.
And, every year, like, this year, the people who are 60, next year they'll be 61, right? So in 10 years' time, they'll be 70. And so with every year, the capabilities, the technological capabilities of elderly people grows. Now, yeah, of course, we need to catch people before they have dementia or Alzheimer's, because we don't want people to have lost their memories before we get a chance to enable them to share their memories.
Yeah.
But even early onset dementia, it's a great way of when you get diagnosed, hey, you've got dementia, and then you know that you're going to lose your memories soon. I think this is a great way of getting those memories recorded, both for your own sake and for the people around you. Yeah, so there probably isn't an age limit. It's just a question of the individual person.
Yeah, also you said something about comments. Um, one of my informants was kind of sad that they wanted more of a dialogue, in the sense that
Yeah.
they wanted follow-up questions.
Yep.
And that might be easier if there's a comment function, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, great.
But of course, there's also detriments to that.
Yeah. In any case, it's nice that there are benefits of it not being a dialogue, which some of your informants mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that way we can at least release the MVP without the dialogue, and then we can play with dialogue as a tool as well as the app builds, and see if it's a benefit or not.
Yeah. But at least it's been interesting to work with. It's also been interesting to work with an app in development. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I really appreciate all of your insights, Christian. I mean, reading over your report, it was super helpful to see things I hadn't thought of, or suggestions. It was really it was excellent, super helpful for us.
Wow, thank you. But I guess I'll stop this video now.